The man who finds you is a ghost. He isn't dead, not physically. But his soul is buried back on Titan Base, under 100,000 tons of rock and ice, right alongside the 5-person crew he was supposed to lead. His name is Arthur Lennox, and he is a mechanic, a salvager, and a professional-grade hermit, living in self-imposed exile on the rust bucket planet of Erebos 7. He's haunted. Haunted by the names on the memorial plaque he built himself. Haunted by the silence of his radio. And haunted by the choice he made that day, the choice that got them all killed. So now he lives a life of self-punishment, scratching out a living in the dust, vowing to never be responsible for another living soul. Until one day a signal screams through the static. It's not human. It's faint, desperate, and dying aliens. And it's a choice. Stay a ghost or answer the call and risk failing again. What would you do? Before we find out what Arthur does, I want to welcome you. That's the story we have for you today. And if you love stories of hope, redemption, and fighting back against the darkness, then you are in the right place. If you're new here or even if you're not, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We are building an amazing community here and I want you to be a part of it. Your support helps me reach a larger audience and bring you more tales like this one. And I love to know who I'm telling stories to. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. And while you're there, what kind of stories do you want to see next? Your suggestions truly help shape this channel. Alright, are you ready? Let's begin. The planet Erebos 7 was where machinery came to die. It was a windswept graveyard of metal and sand, orbiting a sun that had long since given up trying. The air tasted like iron filings and the constant, moaning wind sounded like a funeral dirge. For Arthur Lennox it was home. His small, pressurized outpost was little more than a modified shipping container and a garage, crammed with tools, spare parts, and the smell of ozone and stale coffee. For 2 years, this had been his entire universe. His penance. The Titan-based disaster had been all over the news feeds for a month. Tragic accident, the headlines called it. Supervisory negligence, the internal report whispered. Art knew the truth. He'd cut a corner. He'd pushed his team to bypass a pressure check protocol to meet a deadline. The ice shelf they were mining hadn't just collapsed, it had liquefied under the strain. He was the only one in the command module, the only one to make it to an escape pod. He'd heard their final, panicked shouts over the comms. Then silence. So he ran. He ran to the farthest, darkest, most forgotten speck on the star chart. He came to Erebos 7 to disappear, to strip old ships for parts, and to be left alone with the 5 ghosts who shared his tiny outpost. Then came the storm. It was a bad one, a red-out, that filled the air with so much magnetized iron particulate that it choked all long-range communications. And through that static, through the howl of the wind, came the signal. It was a beacon, but not one he recognized. Not Federation, not corporate. It was weak, looping, and layered with a panic he understood all too well. His first instinct was to shut it down. Not my problem. Not my business. Involvement was a risk. Responsibility was a curse. He'd learned his lesson. He powered down his console. But the signal was still out there. In the wind. In his head. He heard Sarah, his old engineer. You gonna just sit there, Art? Shut up, he growled at the empty room. He stood there for a full minute, his hands shaking. Failing to act. Failing to help. Wasn't that just a different kind of negligence? Damn it, he whispered, cursing his own stubborn conscience. He pulled on his heavy-duty environment suit, grabbed his emergency pack, and slaved his rig's navigation to the signal's origin. The storm was getting worse, visibility dropping to near zero. His heavy-tread salvaging vehicle, the Badger, groaned in protest as it climbed the massive, shifting dunes. It took him 3 hours to travel just 5 kilometers. The signal was getting stronger, then it abruptly died. He was close. He switched to thermal imaging. There. A dark shape, half buried in a drift, almost invisible. It wasn't an old wreck. It was new. The lines were sleek, alien, and clearly damaged. A small, elegant craft that had no business on a junk heap like Erebos 7. He parked the Badger and approached on foot, his plasma cutter drawn. The wind was so loud he almost didn't hear the pounding from inside. Hello, he shouted, his voice tinny over the external speaker. Anyone in there? I'm here too. The side hatch hissed open and a figure stumbled out, collapsing into the red sand. It was a woman. She was humanoid but tall, impossibly slender, and her skin was a pale, luminous white, covered in faint, swirling patterns that seemed to glow with a soft, blue light. like a constellation. Signian. He'd only seen them in vids. Refugees. Wanderers. Rumored to be dangerous. She scrambled back, pulling herself to her feet, her hand going to a small, sparking energy weapon on her hip. She was injured, her leg bent at a bad angle. But her eyes were a solid, deep sapphire, and they were filled with a terrifying, cornered animal ferocity. "Stay back," she hissed, her voice a strange melodic chime but full of venom. "Easy," Art said, holding up his free hand. "I'm not going to hurt you. I heard your signal. The storm." "He's coming," she whispered, her gaze darting to the sky, ignoring him. "He's coming. Who's coming?" Before she could answer, a small head poked out from behind the hatch. A child. A little girl no older than 5 with the same star-dusted skin and the same wide sapphire eyes. She looked at her mother, then at Art, and she wasn't afraid. She was curious. She stepped out, grabbed her mother's trembling arm and spoke in that same chiming voice. "Hush, Mama," the child whispered, her eyes locked on Art. Maybe he's not like the others. Maybe he can help." The woman, the mother, looked at her daughter and her composure broke. A single, pearlescent tear traced a path down her cheek. Her weapon arm wavered. Arthur Lennox, the man who had sworn off all human, or any, contact, looked at the child, then at the mother, and felt the ice around his heart crack. The 5 ghosts in his head went silent. He holstered his plasma cutter. "She's right," Art said, his voice thick. "I'm here to help. My name is Arthur. We need to get you out of the storm. Now." The mother's name was Sylkora. The child's Celeste. Art learned this as he half-carried, half-dragged Sylkora back to the Badger, the massive salvaging rig humming as its internal heaters fought the external cold. Celeste, wrapped in an emergency thermal blanket, sat quietly, her big, unblinking eyes taking in every detail of the cabin. "Your leg is broken," Art said, his voice all business as he pulled out a medkit. He was back on familiar ground. Broken things. He could fix broken things. "This is going to hurt." "It's not the first time," Sylkora said through gritted teeth as he began to set the leg with a high-tech auto-splint. "Thank you, Arthur." Her suspicion was still there, a hard layer of ice, but the immediate threat of the planet had, for now, eclipsed it. "You said someone was coming," Art said, not looking up from his work. "Someone who did that to your ship." Sylkora's breath hitched. "His name is Castor. An executor. From our old faction." "An executor?" "A military leader. A purist. He believes our people, the Signians, must remain pure. That our gifts belong to the collective. He was my husband." Art's hands froze. He looked up. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't a random crash. This was an escape. "And he wants Celeste," Art stated. It wasn't a question. Sylkora nodded, the single tear returning. "Celeste has a gift. Even for our people it's rare. She can see the pathways. The currents in the void. She's a navigator. A true one. She can see where ships should go, where the universe wants them to be. To a navigator, space isn't empty. It's full of roads. Castor doesn't see a child. He sees an asset. A weapon to be controlled. An infallible compass for his war fleet. He believes she is his property." The word property hung in the air, cold and sharp. "He has been hunting us for 2 years, Sylkora whispered, the fight seeming to drain out of her. "Across 5 systems. I thought Erebos 7 was dead enough. Forgotten enough. I was wrong." As if on cue, the rig's short-range proximity alarm blared. A high-gain sensor, one Art used to find buried ship parts, was screaming. "What is that?" Sylkora panicked, trying to sit up. "It's not a what," Art said, his face grim. He hit a switch and the external camera feed flared to life, peering into the readout. The storm was abating and through the swirling iron dust, a new shape descended. It was black. All black. A sleek, blade-like ship that absorbed the dim light. It was military and it was landing at the mouth of the canyon, right where he'd found Sylkora's wreck. "He's here," Sylkora breathed, her voice cracking with terror. Art's mind, the one that had been clouded by guilt for 2 years, suddenly snapped into sharp, cold focus. The ghosts were gone. The panic was gone. All that was left was the problem. "He's at the wreck," Art said, his voice a low growl. "He doesn't know you're with me. Not yet. What do we do? We can't fight him." "We don't," Art said, throwing the Badger into gear. The engine roared. "We run." He spun the massive vehicle around, away from the black ship, and slammed the accelerator. The badger, for all its bulk, could move. It clawed its way up the canyon wall, spitting rocks and sand. "Where are we going?" Sylkora yelled over the engine. "My outpost is compromised. He'll find it in an hour tops. He'll track our heat signature, our engine waste. But I know this planet." "He doesn't." The chase began in earnest. For 12 hours, Art drove. He drove through the glass shard flats, where the wind had fused the sand into a treacherous, uneven plain. He drove through the whispering canyons, a maze of rock so tight that his proximity sensors screamed a constant, deafening alarm. He was pushing the badger and himself to the limit. Behind them, Castor's ship was relentless. It was faster, but Art had the home field advantage. He used the terrain, ducking into caves, driving under massive, long-dead sandworms, using the planet's own magnetic interference to scramble his signature. But Castor was good. Every time Art thought he'd lost him, a shadow would pass overhead. A warning shot from a plasma lance would explode just ahead of them, forcing a detour. During a brief stop to let the engine cool, Celeste, who had been silent for hours, spoke. "You're sad," she said, her small voice cutting through the tension. Art, who was studying a terrain map, flinched. "I'm concentrating, kid." "No," she said, walking over to him. She placed her small, faintly glowing hand on his arm. "You're sad. In here." She pointed to his chest. Like a broken engine. The noise is loud. From before." Art stared at her. This wasn't a normal child. I lost some people. A long time ago," he said, the words feeling like rust in his mouth. "My crew. Was my fault. I was the supervisor. I made a bad call." "You miss them," she said. "Every day. And you're afraid you'll make a bad call now." Art couldn't speak. He just nodded, the tightness in his throat unbearable. Celeste looked at him, her sapphire eyes seeming to see right through him. "You won't. You're not like Castor. He's cold. He's all straight lines. You're warm. You're circles. You're trying to fix the broken engine." Sylkora watched them, and for the first time, Art saw something other than fear in her eyes. It was hope. "We need to keep moving," Art said, his voice thick. "Where can we go?" Sylkora asked. "He will never stop." "There's a place," Art said, pointing to the map. "An old colony. Wayfarer's Rest. It was the first human attempt to settle Erebos 7. It failed, obviously. But it's powered by a geothermal tap. It's got thick walls, and more importantly, it's got a long-range transmitter. An old Fedcom beacon. If we can get there, we can send a signal. A real signal. To Sanctuary Station." Sylkora's head snapped up. "Sanctuary? It's real? As real as you and me. It's a neutral port run by the Guild. They honor refugee status. They have laws. They have ships. Big ones. If we can get a message to them, we're not just running from him. We're running to them." The hope in the cabin was a fragile, new thing. But it was there. "It's our only shot," Art said. "But it's across the Ash Sea. The most dangerous, unstable part of the planet. And we're low on fuel." As if summoned by his words, a new alarm beeped. A proximity sensor from their rear. "He's not overhead," Art said, his blood running cold. "He's on the ground." He looked back. Two smaller ground-based skimmers, sleek and black, were cresting the dune behind them. They were fast. "He's deployed his ground troops," Art growled. "He's hurting us." The skimmers opened fire. Plasma bolts stitched the ground around the badger. Art yanked the wheel, sending them into a sideways skid. "Hold on," he yelled. He aimed the badger at a massive, crumbling rock formation. "What are you doing?" Sylkora screamed. "Fixing the broken engine." He slammed the accelerator, driving straight at the unstable cliff face. The skimmers followed. At the last second, Art hit a separate control. A salvager's tool. A high-power, forward-facing kinetic pulse. A rock cracker, designed to clear debris. He fired it. The pulse, a wave of pure force, slammed into the cliff face. The entire formation didn't just break, it disintegrated. A wall of rock and dust exploded outward. Art spun the wheel, fishtailing the badger away, but the skimmers were too close, too fast. They were buried under tons of rock. Art didn't celebrate. He kept driving. But the badger was hit. A piece of shrapnel had torn through a hydraulic line. It was leaking, limping. And then the engine sputtered and died. They were in the middle of nowhere. The Ash Sea was still 10 kilometers away. And Wayfarer's Rest was on the other side. They were on foot. The silence that fell after the badger's engine died was worse than the chase. There was only the sound of the wind and Sylkora's sharp, indrawn breath. It's over, she whispered, her shoulders slumping. He'll find us in an hour. No, Art said, his voice a steel-edged command. He was already out of his seat, pulling open storage lockers. It's not over. He threw 2 thermal-lined packs onto the floor, along with Canteen's high-energy protein bars, and a small, spooling climber's line. We're 10 clicks from the Ash Sea. We can walk it in 2 hours. The colony is another 15 clicks across the sea. On foot. Sylkora gestured to her splinted leg. Arthur, I can't. You won't have to. He looked at Celeste. And neither will she. He pulled out his plasma cutter and began slicing through the Badger's internal paneling. What are you doing? Improvising, he said. In 10 minutes, he had constructed a crude but effective sand sledge from the rig's hull plates. He piled their supplies onto it, then looked at Sylkora. We're not leaving anyone behind. Not this time. The trek was brutal. Art, a man who hadn't run in 2 years, pulled the sledge with Sylkora and Celeste on it across the broken, uneven ground. The iron-rich sand was like lead shot, and every step was a battle. His muscles burned, his lungs ached. But he didn't stop. Every time he wanted to quit, he'd look at Celeste. She wasn't crying. She was just watching him, trusting him. And that, he realized, was a heavier burden than any sledge. The Ash Sea was a nightmare. It was a vast plain of volcanic glass dust, so fine it billowed like smoke with every step. The air was toxic, forcing them to use emergency rebreathers. The ground itself was unstable, a thin crust over geothermal hotspots. Step where I step, Art ordered, his voice muffled by the mask. Exactly. He used the climber's line as a safety harness, tethering the 3 of them together. If one of them broke through the crust, the other 2 might be able to pull them out. It was a grim, terrifying journey, made in a gray twilight. But through it all, Celeste was a beacon. She would point, her small hand glowing. Not there, Art. The ground is sleepy. Go left. It's stronger there. He listened to her. And every time he found solid ground where it looked like there was none. She was navigating them. When they finally saw the colony of wayfarers rest, it looked like a row of broken teeth biting the horizon. A failed dream. Sanctuary, Art panted, collapsing against the main airlock. He'd done it. He used his plasma cutter to slice through the fused-shut door. The colony was a ghost town, all right. Dust-covered tables, half-finished meals, personal effects dropped where their owners had fled. But, as he'd hoped, the geothermal power was still running. Emergency lights flickered on as they entered. It's cold, Celeste whispered, huddling close to her mother. Sylkora, Art said, pointing to a terminal. See if you can find the comms bay. I need to get the main transmitter online. It's on the roof. I'll need to realign the dish. Sylkora, grim-faced, nodded and hobbled to the console. Art climbed the access ladder to the roof. The wind-up here was fierce, but the storm had passed. The sky was a deep, bruised purple, and the stars of this alien galaxy were coming out. The transmitter dish was huge, a relic of a more optimistic time. Its alignment motors were seized, frozen with rust and time. Come on, you beast, Art grunted, putting his shoulder to the massive gear. It wouldn't budge. He got out his tools. He was a mechanic. This was his territory. Down below, Sylkora's fingers flew over the console. Power was low, but she was rerouting auxiliary systems, diverting everything to the transmitter. She found old logs. Colony reports. They weren't just settlers, they were scientists, studying the planet. And then she found the last log. Day 247, the captain's voice was strained. We can't explain it. The anomalies are getting worse. We're being herded. Something is out there, hunting us. Not killing, just playing. Forcing us into the wayfarers. Oh God, The log ended in a scream. Arthur. Sylkora shouted into her comm, we have to get out of here. This place isn't just abandoned, it's a trap. I know, Art's voice came back strained. I can see his ship. He wasn't landing at the wreck. He was landing here. He's been waiting for us. Sylkora's blood ran cold. She turned to the external sensors. A single black-armored figure was approaching the main airlock. Kester. He's here. He's at the door. The dish is stuck. Art yelled back, desperation in his voice. I just need one more minute. We don't have a minute. And that's when a new sound filled the colony. A loud, wailing siren. A proximity alarm. The one they had just triggered. A cold, imperious voice suddenly boomed over the colony's internal speakers. A valiant effort, mechanic, Castor's voice echoed, dripping with contempt. You have, at least, saved me the trouble of flushing you out of the desert. You hurted yourself. Now, bring me the asset. Bring me my daughter. Sylkora looked at Celeste, who was hiding behind the console. Her terror was suddenly replaced by a cold, hard rage. Arthur, she said into the calm, her voice low and dangerous. He's inside. He's coming for us. The colony's main atrium was a large, open space, 3 levels high, filled with the dead, dusty trees of a failed biodome. It was here that Castor's warriors, 4 of them in sleek black armor, fanned out. They moved with a chilling, silent precision. They're in the control center, Executor, one of them reported. Of course they are, Castor's voice replied, still on the speakers. The predictable path of the desperate. Seal the atrium. No one leaves. Bring them to me. Up on the roof, Art heard the order. He slammed his wrench against the gear housing. No. The dish finally broke free, groaning in protest. He aimed it at the coordinates for Sanctuary Station, his fingers flying on the manual controls. Sylkora, I'm sending the signal. Buy me some time. There's no time, she screamed back. Down in the control center, Sylkora looked at the blinking terminal. She saw the logs again. Quarantine, decontamination, containment. She suddenly knew what to do. Arthur, she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. Get Celeste. Get to the transmitter room. Shield it. Bar the door. What? Sylkora, what are you doing? What a mother has to do. Just go. Now. Art heard the raw command in her voice. He slid down the ladder, his boots hitting the floor. Celeste, with me. Quick. He grabbed the child's hand and ran for the small lead-lined room that housed the transmitter's core. The moment they were through, Sylkora's hand slammed down on a large red button on the console. A new alarm blared. A heavy clanging sound. Warning, emergency containment protocol initiated. All blast doors sealing. Massive 2-meter-thick slabs of steel began to descend from the ceilings, sealing off every sector of the colony. Castor saw it happening. He was on the 2nd-level gantry. He saw the doors. He saw Art and Celeste disappear into the transmitter room. And he saw the main control center door begin to close. No, he roared. He abandoned his men and sprinted, his powerful form a black blur. He dove, sliding under the massive, groaning door at the last possible second. The door slammed shut with a boom that shook the entire colony. Silence. Castor was in the control center. His 4 warriors were trapped in the atrium. And Sylkora was on the other side of the blast door. She had sealed herself in with him. A foolish move, Castor sneered, rising to his full height. He dwarfed her. You think this changes anything? It changes everything, Sylkora spat, backing up, her hand on her broken leg. But they weren't alone. A panel in the ceiling popped open. Art dropped to the floor, his face a mask of grime and fury. He had come back through a maintenance duct. I'm not, he panted, leaving anyone behind. Castor actually laughed. A cold, dry sound. The mechanic. The broken man. You fight for a species not your own. For a child that is not yours. You are a fool, driven by misplaced sentiment. He drew a long, humming energy blade from his back. And you? Art said, pulling his heavy industrial plasma cutter from his belt. You hunt your own child. You call her property. You're just a bully with a better ship. She is my blood. Castor roared. She is a resource. Her gift belongs to the purists. You are a primitive, hoarding something you cannot even comprehend. I comprehend this, Art said, and he charged. The fight was not a duel. It was a beating. Castor was a trained warrior, strong, fast, and armored. Art was an exhausted mechanic. Castor shattered Art's arm in the first 30 seconds, sending him crashing into a console. He swatted Sylkora away like a fly. He stood over Art, his boot on his chest, crushing the air from his lungs. The energy blade hummed, inches from Art's face. It is the right of the strong to take what is theirs, Castor said, a lesson. That is the law of the universe. Art was blacking out. His ribs were cracking. He could smell his suit searing from the heat of the blade. He saw the faces of his crew. Sarah. Ben. Anya. Not again. Not again. You're wrong, Art choked out. It's the right of the strong to protect. And with his one good unbroken arm, he jammed his plasma cutter, the simple mundane tool of a mechanic, against the unarmored joint under Castor's arm. And he hit the activation switch. Castor's armor was built to stop energy projectiles. Not a focused, industrial-grade cutting jet. The executor's eyes went wide. He didn't even scream. He just looked at the hole in his chest. At the man who had done it. He didn't understand. Then he fell, his armor clanging on the metal floor. Art collapsed, his lungs finally pulling in a ragged breath. He was broken. But he was alive. Sylkora crawled to the console. The transmitter. The signal Art had started, it was still sending. A looping, desperate call. She looked at the screen. And then she saw it. A new data packet. A reply. Sanctuary station to unknown beacon. Signal received. We read you, Wayfarer's Rest. Hang on. Recovery shuttle Hope's Anchor is on the way. ETA 12 hours. We are coming. Sylkora began to sob. Not in fear, but in relief. She crawled over to Art, who was lying in a heap, and put her head on his chest. Celeste crept out of the transmitter room and wrapped her small arms around them both. The three of them, a broken, desperate, impossible family, huddled together in the silence. And for the first time they were safe. The 12 hours that followed were the longest of Arthur's life. The colony was silent, save for the distant, frustrated pounding of Castor's warriors, trapped in the atrium. They eventually gave up, and the silence that returned was absolute. Art was in bad shape. His arm was a ruin, and he had at least 3 broken ribs. But Sylkora, using the last of her strength and the colony's medkit, had stabilized him. They huddled in the control center, wrapped in old blankets, and waited. When the Hope's Anchor shuttle descended, landing on the dusty plain outside the colony, it felt like a dream. The newcomers, in the bright white and blue uniforms of the Sanctuary Guild, were professional and efficient. They moved like doctors, not soldiers. They took one look at the scene, at the dead executor, the terrified mother, the exhausted child, and the broken mechanic, and simply said, "It's all right. You're safe now." The journey to Sanctuary Station was a blur. Art was put in a medical stasis, and when he woke up, he wasn't on a planet. He was in a bright, clean room, looking out a massive viewport at a city of lights. Sanctuary Station. It was a massive, rotating ring, a glittering jewel in the blackness, home to 100 different species, all living in peace. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Sylkora was sitting by his bed. Her leg was in a new advanced tech cast, and her star-dusted skin seemed to glow with a healthier light. "You're awake," she said, her voice soft. Are you real?" Art mumbled. She smiled. A real, genuine smile. "We're safe, Arthur. The Guild Council granted us immediate, permanent asylum. She's in the children's wing. She's playing. I've never seen her just play. And Castor's men? Captured. They surrendered the moment they saw the Guild cruiser. They'll stand trial. The purists have no jurisdiction here. It's over." Art let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 2 years. He looked at his arm, which was in a complex, humming medical field. "So, what now?" "Well," Sylkora said a little shyly, "the Guild was very impressed with you. They've reviewed the logs. They know what you did. What you built." She gestured to his tools, which the Guild crew had carefully recovered and placed on his side table. "Your skills, Arthur. As a mechanic, a salvager, an engineer, they are in very high demand on an aging station like this. They've offered you a job. A chief engineer's post. If you want it." Art looked out the window. He had a job. A new life. He could stay. He could be someone. But the ghosts, the 5 faces from Titan Base, they were still there at the edge of his vision. He had saved this family. But he had failed that one. I don't know," he said. "They're not gone, are they?" Sylkora said softly, looking at his pained expression. "Your crew." Art shook his head. "They'll never be gone, Arthur. But maybe you're not meant to be their ghost. Maybe you're meant to be their legacy." A week later, Art was out of the med bay. He was standing in a small, quiet administrative office. The light was warm. Sylkora was next to him. A guild administrator was holding out a data pad. "It's just a formality," the administrator said kindly. "For her to be enrolled in the guild school, she needs a registered sponsor. With you and her mother both signing, she'll have full guild child status." Art looked at the data pad. It was a guardianship form. He picked up the stylus. His hand, scarred and strong, was steady. He signed his name. Arthur Lennox. The door burst open and Celeste ran in, a bright, colorful alien toy in her hand. She was laughing. She ran straight to Art and wrapped her arms around his legs. "Papa Art," she giggled. Look. Mr. Snuggles can talk. He says gleep glop. Art froze. Papa Art. He reached down and with his good arm lifted her up. She was light. She was real. He looked over her head at Sylkora, who was watching them, her sapphire eyes shining. His guilt wasn't gone. It was a scar and it would always be a part of him. But it wasn't a chain anymore. It wasn't a weight. It was a reminder. A reminder of the cost of failure and the profound, impossible, redemptive power of protecting a new family. He hugged Celeste tight. Yes, Celeste, he whispered, his voice thick. We are. And that's where our story ends? Or maybe it's just beginning. What did you think of Arthur's journey from a ghost to a guardian? Let me know your favorite part of the story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of redemption, hope, and humanity finding its way in the dark, please show your support. Hit that like button. It's the best way to tell YouTube that you want to see more. Share this video with a friend who loves a good sci-fi story, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. And don't forget to check out the other stories in our channel's playlist. There are so many more worlds to explore. As always, thank you so much for listening. My name is, and I am so grateful to have you here. May you find your own sanctuary wherever you are. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next story.